Hi everyone, welcome. Out here on the bench, you could see I've got my European Nightcrawler worm bins, and in these bins we're doing a little interesting experiment attempting to compost wool fabrics. So I had this wool sweater that I cut down the middle, put half into each system, and we started that experiment at this point 74 days ago. And so far we haven't seen a whole lot of progress, but I'm sure at this point, well, I don't know what I'm sure of. We'll only be sure once we see for ourselves, and that's what we're going to do now. Let's get into the bins, see how they're coming along, and at the same time, get them their next feeding. A feeding that's going to consist of a slightly juicier meal than they got last time. I mean, okay, cauliflower, carrots, you don't really think of most of these things as juicy, but compared to a bunch of ground up corn cob, which is all they got last time, totally dried out flakes of ground up corn cob, and some coffee, which wasn't damp at all either. Their last feeding went in with pretty much no moisture content. I took some of the stuff they got last time, as I've done during the past few feedings in these systems, and attempted to divvy up the food in such a way that we could throw a little bit of it right down into the sleeves of the sweater, in the hopes that by doing so we're going to promote some worm traffic down into the sleeves. So I am curious to see how they did. Some of the coffee and corncob flakes were placed into the sleeves, and then at the end we rested what remained on top. So out here on the surface, I believe I'm already beginning to see some signs of the ground up corn cob. All these little light colored fragments, I believe, are that. And I'm already seeing a little portion of the wool sweater over here in bin number 1. Not too surprising, I suppose. There's something about corn cob, definitely seems to resist breakdown. I guess in my mind it had always just been the fact that it's very dense, a very dense material. But I believe that there might also just be something to its composition. Whatever it is that it's made up of seems to, or at least I'm assuming, partially contributes to the fact that it's a little bit of a slow breakdown food. Earlier I bumped into a banana stem. Here's another banana stem. This one's got that large chunk that multiple stems hang off of when you got a bunch. And okay, now we can see a little bit more of this stuff. Here and there I'm bumping into something that I think for whatever reason, definitely likes to grow, but it seems like finally these pieces of Brussels sprout stems are no longer attempting to develop shoots and try growing. Alright, so no need to be so careful with this thing. In the past we've you can see here some of the portion where I had cut the sweater in half, but I did it in a way that each system received one of the 2 sleeves. So one of the ideas I had, I'm gonna have to, do I do this? Do I get my clean hand dirty? Or can I kind of challenge my dexterity to see if I could do it single-handed? I was thinking of turning the sleeve inside out, which I don't believe we've done so far. And it does seem like if I'm clever, I can devise a way to do that. Down here within the sleeve, I'm not seeing any worm activity, although I think in the past we've peeked in and spotted a few worms inside the sleeve. Not sure if that was here in bin number 1 or over in bin number 2. But I figured, hey, if even if we're not seeing many signs of breakdown, perhaps by here we go. Here's a worm that must have come in through the cuff sleeve end, and I'm seeing a hole. But when this wool sweater was given to me, I believe the main reason for it being disqualified as part of the previous owner's wardrobe was the fact that it had moth damage. Moths had made some holes. I'm not sure if that large hole there is moth damage, worm damage, or maybe even got caught on something and was torn while it was still a human garment. So that's our wool sweater. It looks like this is the part that got the tag. So that's possibly the only thing that will remain when all is said and done in here. So let's just position this in such a way that perhaps we can once again drop in a little bit of food down into the sleeve. So the sleeve will be right here with the opening into it, made quite obvious. Alright, so as I do sometimes, I'll use whatever it is that I did in the first bin as a model for how to handle the check-in at the next bin or bins. So why don't we do that? We'll just go for the sweater. There wasn't anything real notable other than the leftovers of the corn cob flakes, which I'm assuming we're going to see here too. And here's even a little piece of leftover Brussels sprout, not too surprising. Luckily not showing signs. No, this one does seem to have signs of growth, which I always chip off. This little shoot coming off of it, one or two shoots, perhaps even more over here. And hopefully it'll give up at some point. In the past, I remember not too long ago getting a little bit frustrated with how a whole bunch of Brussels sprout that I had fed was holding out. I mean, all the leaves broke down, but there's something in the stem that makes it want to continue to grow. Or maybe it was potato, one of those things that is really insistent on continuing to grow. Now, on the inside of this sweater, you can see a good many wormies hanging out, which is cool. So perhaps it was this sweater where we observed some worm traffic making its way down into the sleeve a little bit more than we saw in bin number 1. Alrighty. Let's not make a big federal case out of this, but I do want to be consistent and turn this sleeve inside out too, like we did in bin number 1, just to not give one or the other system any sort of a unfair advantage. Not that this gives any sort of advantage or disadvantage to anything. I just suppose it's more in line with wanting to remain consistent. So let's just excavate a bit more here, because we did make ourselves a good bit of room over in bin number 1 here. I'm getting this vibe, or this sense, not even a vibe, I mean it's obvious, you could probably even see it visually, how the material here in bin number 2 appears to be a little bit more damp. Sometimes I'll make minor adjustments to the way I restore the plastic top coverings. If I feel that perhaps in one system I want to either lock in the moisture better or perhaps allow it to escape deliberately a little bit better. So if I don't forget, maybe we'll put the covers back on over here in bin number 2 a little bit sloppily, and allow for some openings around the edge so that some moisture can possibly exit. Do we take the largest object and stick it into the sleeve and see what that does? It would be unfortunate if the stuff just sat in there untouched by worms, but maybe the trick would be to not drop it all the way down into the center of the sleeve. Can you tell I'm making this up as I go along? Alright, we'll save the rest and we'll sprinkle that out along over the top of the fabric. But we'll also drop in a little bit of coffee into each sleeve. And finally we'll just attempt to get some of the food to settle down into the sleeve, and it does appear that I've actually dropped that large chunk pretty much to the center. So I can only hope that the worms are going to be able to sense it and go for it And if they sense it and they can't go for it, well, they can't go for it and they won't, so we'll see. We shall see. Now, I don't recall us seeing any feeding zone indicators out on top, but then again, I wasn't paying very close attention either. So we're going to save these 2 coffee filters that we've got here, with which at the end we're going to be able to mark where we last fed. Something I like to do, a little tradition here in my worm bins. So let's divvy out the remainder of this lovely feeding. Oops. Try to get this material back in the bin instead of rinsing it down at the sink. And what else is there left to do? I guess we had some leftovers, little bits of Brussels sprout fragments, which I know we saw a couple of, but not many. And I believe this was the only one that was showing signs of still growing. And over here, I guess, in bin number 2, it definitely seems like it'll be a good idea to... Oh, I just broke the... Once upon a time, I put some chestnut into these systems, and the inside material inside the chestnut got gobbled up 1, 2, 3. But the shell was really holding out really good. So, since I just broke it, I figured, you know, why not help it along at this point, and I doubt we'll be able to identify any of that going forward from now on. Good many worms. Look at them all. Good stuff. And it does seem like we had at some point recently applied some leafy matter out onto the top surface, which I always enjoy blending in at this point. Once it's had a chance to sit in the bins for a little while and get primed and seasoned, now it's just going to make really good, I guess what's the right way to describe it? To me, it feels like this material is so damp that getting something mixed in will sort of kind of prevent stuff from clumping, sort of like a declumping agent or something like that. Although it's hard to think about leaves as a declumping agent. They're just leaves. Alright, so here I doubt we're going to see the type of moisture we observed in bin number 2, although there is a good bit of moisture down there, just not as much. And it's kind of nice just to get the leaves blended into it, whether or not it's thought to be serving the purpose of maybe helping to absorb some of the seemingly excess moisture. Here's another piece of chestnut, which we're going to give the same treatment to, although there would probably be another half of this, because this is only half of the chestnut shell. Perhaps if we engage with the other one, we'll be able to give it the same crush treatment. But I'm not going to go out of my way looking for it. So let's get the last of this stuff blended in and stirred around and aerated. And the one other thing I'm noticing in this system, both systems, that we've got a good many springtails. Almost everywhere I look, whether it's out on the surface or down deep after I've excavated or tilled around, I keep noticing lots and lots of springtails in here, which in the past would have freaked me out. More and more I've come to accept them as just contributors to the worm composting activity. You know, I'm going to hold off. I was tempted to grab some more leaves and add them in, but in systems that are this age, oftentimes even younger systems, I'll just stop adding leaves for sure. Perhaps I'll keep adding some bedding here and there, although I can't even remember. Perhaps we've already graduated these systems to be foraging, in which case we wouldn't want to be adding any new bedding. I'm not sure if that's the case here yet, but if it is, then I'm glad we didn't add any new bedding other than just throwing in some new feeding zone indicators, but those are sort of exempt. It wouldn't really count as supplementary bedding, I don't think. So here at the end, I'm gonna allow my soiled hand to get a little bit dirty just so I can return some of this material down into the system, but I'm going to reserve leaving a part of my pinky finger clean just so I can turn off the camera before heading off to the sink without making things filthy. So, besides a few things needing to get cleaned up and put away, there's not much more to do than just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.